Good evening. My name is Bruce Chester, and I'm the For a Better Garden City, or better known as FABGC, candidate from the Estates section. Tonight is our 8th Zoom meeting, and I know many of you have been on before, and we're going to do similar to what we have done before. The candidates are going to talk, and they're going to take questions afterwards. John Cantwell, who I have to thank for setting all these up, our tech genius, is going to explain how to handle an absentee ballot application. And then we have a surprise video later on. So what I'm going to do is introduce the candidates. And before I do, I want to say that it's been a privilege, and I'm very proud to run on a slate with these candidates. Not only are their professional backgrounds excellent, but most importantly to me, their integrity. And I think that's something that our current board sometimes lacks. So I'm going to start. Our mayoral candidate, Cosmo Venezali, is at a board meeting, architect review board meeting, and therefore I'm going to read his bio just to give you a background on him again. Cosmo Venezali has lived in the western section of Garden City for 28 years with his wife Colette and son and daughter. Cosmo is a licensed architect with over 35 years experience and has run his practice based in New York City for more than 25 years. His firm is an award-winning firm with specialties in high-end residential design, institutional projects, and historic preservation. Cosmo served as a member of the Garden City Board of Education Ad Hoc Committee in 2000 with a group of distinguished residents. As a result of their collective efforts, they were able to save millions of dollars in the renovation of the village school building. As a member of the committee, Cosmo was named Citizen of the Year in Garden City for his accomplishments. In 2008, he was asked to serve on the mayor's committee for St. Paul's by the Board of Trustees to evaluate potential adaptive reuse of St. Paul's main building. Again, he was part of a group of distinguished residents in dealing with issues regarding St. Paul's, which is still ongoing. In 2011, Cosmo was appointed to the Architectural Design Review Board, which is actually the meeting that he's at tonight, as well as more recently a member of the Zoning Review Committee. He has coached Little League and GCAA travel baseball. Presently, as a member of the Western Property Owners Association, Cosmo has contributed pro bono architectural services to address the restoration of the Edgemere Firehouse. The committee has spent countless hours to develop viable plans to save the Edgemere Firehouse while seeking to be part of the process and obtain the best possible results for the residents of Garden City. He volunteers his services to give the Western Property Owners Association Firehouse Committee a voice in their participation with the Board of Trustees and the Garden City Fire Department. The committee, since its formation in the fall of 2019, is still seeking meaningful discussion and participation as stakeholders in this project. So that gives you some background on Cosmo, who I really feel will be an excellent mayor based on what he has done for Garden City and his experience in this field, which is really so important now. I'm going to go run through the candidates and let them talk a bit about their background. I'm going to start with Mary Carter Flanagan. Mary is an attorney and has been very, very active in the town. And Mary, would you like to tell us a little more about yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Bruce. My name is Mary Carter Flanagan. I'm the trustee candidate for the Western section to complete a one-year term. I have lived in Garden City with my family since 1998. I also grew up in Garden City. I have been practicing as a lawyer for many years. I have years of litigation experience, and more recently, for the last 9 years, I've been an administrative law judge with the Workers' Compensation Board, New York State administrative law judge. In town, I've been involved in a host of different volunteer activities. I was the president of the Garden City Nursery School. I was a co-chair for the Cinco de Mayo fundraiser for Fanconi anemia when that was, a new fundraiser here in town. I also was a Girl Scout leader for 2 different troops and a lacrosse coach, as well as having other experience, soccer coach and St. Anne's CCD teacher. So I've been involved in the community for many years and am passionate about Garden City and looking forward to serve as a trustee.
Thank you, Mary. Our candidate from the central section is Terry Deegan. Terry has at least, I think it's 30 years experience on Wall Street. I was always fascinated by Wall Street. I knew people that worked there, never got involved in it. So Terry, why don't you give us some more details on that?
Bruce, close to 35 years, and I have a gray hair to prove it. I'm a lifelong resident of Garden City. I've been around, again, as I said, my entire life. I'm a proud graduate of Garden City High School. I married a girl who was actually through the Catholic school system of St. Anne's and Sacred Heart. We've been married 32 years. We sent our 4 children through the Garden City school system very proudly. And we have settled in here, and a big part of what we had done, my wife had done things on the charity side, American Cancer Society, as well as the St. Anne's respite program. I'm a long-time coach of football, soccer, basketball, boys and girls lacrosse, and collectively probably did that for about 15 years. A lot of things that I'm passionate about with Garden City. I was thrilled to be invited into this group to be the candidate, and I look forward to working together with everybody.
Thank you, Terry. Tom O'Brien, our candidate from the Eastern section. We got a pretty impressive resume in the consulting business. Tom, do you want to elaborate a little more on that?
Sure. I'll start off by saying a little bit about myself. My wife, Donna, and I are lifelong residents of Garden City. I've been involved in many community and civic organizations. I live over on Chestnut Street. I'm married to Donna Murphy O'Brien. She's a Murphy, grew up on Chestnut Street. And we have 2 adult children who went to the Garden City schools, Mary Beth and Patrick. So I've been very active in the community coaching football and baseball for many years. I actually coached the Garden City High School football team for 3 years. I've served as one of 2 trustees at St. Joseph's Parish, where I'm also a lector. And I have served on the St. Joseph's School Board, where I went to school, as did my wife. So I also serve on numerous non-for-profit boards, including Hofstra University's advisory board for the Zarb School of Business. And my career is over 30 years in the global business development role. I've been an executive for 3 very prestigious firms in that in the management, consulting, and professional services industry. So basically what I've been doing is providing business advisory and information technology solutions to global 500 companies. And what I do and what my teams have done is we solve diverse business and technology problems. I have a great track record of success providing what I call outcome-driven services and solutions to the C-level. Those are like CEOs, CIOs, CMOs, CFOs of major corporations to accelerate their growth through operational improvement, cost containment, et cetera. So right now I'm working as a global managing director for Concerted Concepts. They're a very well-known data analytics firm that based on business drivers, it provides solutions for major corporations around the world. Prior to that, I worked at Alvarez & Marsal, headed up their Eastern business unit. They're about a $2.9 billion consulting firm. I headed up business development for the East Coast. And then prior to that, I was the global managing director and the senior vice president for RCG Global Services. And there I actually headed up their New York Metro region and national accounts. I managed over 300 professionals in sales, business development, global outsourcing, project delivery, recruiting. project resource allocation, deployment, all the business operations. So I had my own budget. I ran my own P&L. I worked with over 150 clients. And my business unit was actually recognized by Cranes New York as one of the top 10 consulting firms in New York. And I'm very proud of our success and my team's success. So like Terry, I'm very proud to be running with Bruce, Mary, and Terry and Cosmos. I think we have a great slate, and we're all have a common goal to do what's right for the community and hear the residents, treat them with respect. And I think we all provide the leadership skills necessary to get it done. One of the things that I may say about myself is I'm good at conflict resolution, and I can get things done, and I'm a good listener. I'm happy to learn, and I love people and working with people.
Thank you, Tom, very much. As I said, my name is Bruce Chester, and I'm the candidate from the Estates section of our village. I live on Kensington Road. My wife and I have lived here for over 23 years now. We raised our 4 children. They went through the excellent Garden City school system. They're all doing quite well right now. And I have been an insurance professional for 45 years. I started off in the Travelers Insurance Company in their life and health insurance division. I then went into the independent agency end of the business, where I was able to sell all forms of insurance and not with just one company. I specialized in dealing with municipal insurance, and that would be water districts, fire districts, school districts at one time, as well as country clubs. And in that business, I had to look at the budgets of the various municipalities and see how it corresponded to the type of coverage that I would write for them. And that's something I feel I'd be able to be a big asset to the village if we were so fortunate to get on the board. I have served as president of the largest insurance professional organization for independent agents in the state, the Tri-County Independent Agents. I was named their Insurance Person of the Year. And with the Downstate Insurance Council, which also encompasses probably more than 1,000 insurance professionals, which is not just agents, but also company people, I was named their Insurance Executive of the Year. So my background in insurance and running my own business, as I was in the independent agency business, I eventually became president of my own, an owner of my own agency in Carl Place, the Chester Insurance Agency, for over 30 years. I also ran various civic and service organizations. I was president of the Westbury Carl Place Kiwanis Club, and also was heavily involved in Mineola Lions Club, an organization that raises close to $75,000 a year to help the blind. I was treasurer, so I had to look at their various budgets. I'm currently the Grand Knight of the Corpus Christi Council Knights of Columbus, and again, have to look at their budgets. So yes, I ran, not a major company, but a good sized company that was profitable. And I think that's the most important thing. My wife and I were active in town. The 4 kids played various sports. I coached Centennial soccer for about 3 years. I was involved in the Boy Scouts early on when we were here, when my son was young. So we have been active in all the different charitable activities that have taken place. And I feel we all would add a lot to taking care of the issues and problems that this village has. And I thank you for listening. I'm going to turn it over to John, who is going to go over the procedures for filling out an absentee ballot for those of you who would like to know that.
Yep, and sorry to all of you who already know all of this, but we're going to go over it anyways. Also, really quick before I get started here, if you'd like to ask a question, feel free to raise your hand. You can hit the participants button at the bottom, and then there's a raise hand option in the lower corner, or you can chat it to me, and I'll ask the candidates, if your Zoom name is something like iPhone or iPad or something like that, please also include your name in the chat. Also happy to ask anonymous if you'd prefer it that way. All right, everybody can see this? Thumbs up from, yes, okay. All right, so voting in the village election. A couple of steps: requesting an absentee ballot and then actually submitting the ballot and voting. How to get an absentee ballot. You can go onto our website, fabgc.org. Right there near the top is how to vote. Right there near the top of the how to vote page is the link to download the application, as well as information for contacting the Karen Altman, the village clerk. You can also get an application directly from the village clerk mailed to your house. Email her, call her, she will mail the application to your house. Once you have the application, you need to fill it out and get it back to the village clerk. On section 1, everybody in the village is eligible to mark temporary illness or physical disability and then vote by mail. That is an acceptable reason for requesting an absentee ballot for this election due to COVID. For section 2, you're marking the general village election. Section 3, 4, and 5, all the stuff that you know, your name, address, date of birth, county. Section 6, you're leaving blank. Section 7, you have a couple of options. You are allowed to designate a person to pick up your ballot. You can pick up the ballot yourself after they're available, or you can have the ballot mailed to you. Be wary of tight timelines. We'll talk about them here in just a second. And then section 8, you're gonna sign it. The timeline, and this is important. If you need to register to vote, if you need to change your address, you need to do that by March 5th. The instructions for registering to vote is on our website as well under that how to vote. If you are registered with New York State, with Nassau County at your Garden City Village address, then you are eligible to vote in this election. There's no separate registration that's required specifically for the village. On March 9th is the deadline for the village clerk to receive requests for absentee ballots to be mailed. So if you want your absentee ballot to be mailed to you, you need to get the application to the village clerk by the 9th. On the 10th, absentee ballots are mailed. It might happen before that, but this is the latest date that it must happen by, so count on it being March the 10th. And then March the 16th is the day that you can go and vote in person at Village Hall or have your absentee ballot back to the village clerk. Not just postmarked, but actually received by the village clerk by 9 p.m. on voting day. The Village Hall will be open from 12 to 9. On March 16th, that will be the only place that you can vote in person and the only day. All right, really important, March 16th, just to say it again. All right, so this is about what the ballot will look like. You have on the ballot 2 candidates for mayor, one from the Community Agreement Party, one from the For a Better Garden City Party. You have 6 candidates for a 2-year term trustee, 3 from the Community Agreement Party, 3 from For a Better Garden City, and then 2 on the for the 1-year term trustee, 1 from Community Agreement Party, 1 from For a Better Garden City. The really important thing is this is 3 separate races. 1 vote for mayor, 1 vote for 1-year term. And in that middle section, you're going to vote for 3 trustees. The top 3 vote getters from that section will be elected to be trustee. You don't have to vote by section. You don't just vote for any individual party. You can vote for any 3 in that block.
But we hope you vote for FABGC across the board.
All right. Oh, sorry. Let me stop sharing here.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for John? I guess raise up your hand if you do. Okay, doesn't look like we do. John, I really appreciate your work on this and getting this together. It's very, very important and a big part of the campaign going forward. At this point,
Bruce, I do see a hand up.
You did, I'm sorry.
I do see a hand up, Tom.
I'm sorry?
Tom has a hand up.
Tom O'Brien?
No, not Tom O'Brien.
Oh.
Are you sure?
On the
I'm
screen,
positive.
I can see too.
Funny, I can't.
Oh, yes, I do. Tom. Hi, Tom. You want to go ahead? You have to unmute yourself.
I think you have to ask them to unmute,
Okay.
but I don't see them.
Okay.
I just did.
All right, I get, hold on.
I see
There he
Tom
is.
now.
Hi,
Right back.
Tom.
All right. So I may have missed something, which I think at least is important to me. There is a fourth candidate, right, who is running to fulfill the one-year term of Bruce Bolenbach, the Western trustee. Did I miss that somehow or other?
That was, and it may have been cut off a little on your screen because of our pictures, but that was the third one. That would be me and Steve Macrinos for the West. That's the one-year term, and you'll vote for just one person.
So there are five. There are really 5 elections, correct? 5.
No,
It's
it's
fun.
the
You got 4
mayor.
Yes. And
then there are 3 spots for 2-year trustees, and then
one-
there's the 1-year balance election.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Welcome.
No, absolutely. It's the question. Mary was at the end of the ballot running against Stephen Macrinos for that 1-year trustee spot. So Mary, of course, is FABGC. And then in the middle of the 3 2-year trustee elections. And then, of course, the mayor is the first one there. But sure, any questions? Please.
I got a question via chat. Can you submit the ballot to village clerk before the 16th? Yes, you can submit it anytime between the 10th and the 16th.
Okay. All right. Any other questions related to John's explanation of the absentee ballot and the election in general? Okay. I hope I didn't miss a hand because I missed Tom's. Okay. I think we're okay. John, would we be ready for the video? Do you want me to turn that over to, okay. We are going to show you a short video, and I'm going to turn it over to Tom O'Brien, who will give you a little background on it. Tom, please.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So you're now going to hear from a resident of Garden City who grew up in town, and he was recently a Property Owners Association president. And he asked if we could discuss a few issues tonight via video. He wants to talk about the third track issue, the firehouse issue, the Garden City News issue, and the handicap parking issue on 7th Street, which actually was one of my main motivators for running for trustee. My feeling was that our town trustees hit a very low point when it was a mean-spirited and indefensible action to go to the mat to oppose the request for handicap parking on 7th Street for our fellow residents who have disabilities. So that was the main motivator for me for accepting the FABGC, the FABGC request for me to run. The person who I'm very proud to introduce to you was elected and served in the Delaware government. And he held public office there for many years. He was also grew up in Garden City. He was a high school basketball American, and then he went on to stardom at Williams College. And unfortunately, he was hit with a disability that you're going to hear about that was unforeseen. One of the best athletes to come out of Garden City and now suffering with a disability. So I'm proud to announce to you, introduce you to Gerry Kelly. And he put a video together that I think you'll all get a lot of value out of.
Okay, so I told the candidates that this has about a 75% shot of working great across all of our platforms with Facebook Live and everything. I hope so. We're gonna get started here, and I hope everybody could hear it. I'm gonna mute everyone. Sorry, you gotta live with me fumbling a little bit. You also may need to increase your volume just a little bit. Jerry's got a mask on in the video.
Hi, my name is Gerry Kelly. Formerly, I worked at the Western Property Owners Association as a director, as vice president, and president. And today I just want to talk to you about my experiences in the Property Owners Association, and also leader of another group called the Mobility Impaired Committee. With the Western Property Owners Association, we had many issues come up during my term. But we found out during our term and during our years with the Western Property Owners Association that our votes, whether they be in a general meeting or at a director's meeting, were not resonating with our trustees. And that became a source of contention. So while we respect the Property Owners Association and we respect the years of the gentleman's agreement, I think it's time for a change. I think the people that have represented us have represented themselves and not the people who are part of their section. And this came very clear on the third track issue. I remember getting an email from State Senator Campanen saying, "Where are your trustees?" And even though all of us on the Western Property Owners Association had objected to the third track, our trustees said, no, it's a done deal. You look at what they did when the fire issue came up, and they thought that they had been so heavily criticized on that issue that they decided to change the Garden City News as the official newspaper. We in the Western Property Owners Association were not aware of that, and when we were, the directors voted right away to say, don't do that. But they went ahead because they could not take the criticism. And one of the things when you're in public office is you're always going to be criticized. So you have to make sure that you use your judgment to understand, when people are critical, that's okay, if you've made the right decision. But the one issue, of course, with me that became the issue of most import was the handicap parking on 7th Street. There are a lot of people that do not have access to 7th Street back in 2016. So from 2016 to 2018, I think I went through 3 traffic commissioners, and each time the handicapped people were treated very poorly. I remember that day because very well because I sat next to Jack Gerns and other people I represented. And the point to me was that when I started in 2016, I was starting because I had promised people that I was going to get handicapped parking on 7th Street. And I was going to do that not only for me, but for all the people who had asked me to get that. One of those people was a World War II veteran, Frank Serona. And Frank Serona said, Gerry, you can get handicapped parking on 7th Street. And I said, yes, I can. And I'll work hard for it for you. Because anyone who can make 8 landings in the Pacific and survive needs to have a handicapped spot on 7th Street. And at each and every turn, the village made it harder and harder for me to get the job done. And my attorneys, before the mediation, when we went to federal court the first time, came back to me and said, Gerry, do you know what their defense is? They're going to say that you are not disabled. So you have multiple sclerosis. You have trouble walking, but you are not disabled. That's what the village said. So I had a meeting that night with my board, of the WPOA, and I looked at our trustees and I looked at my members and I said, they say I'm not disabled. A miracle has occurred. I'm not disabled. I think the last comment I want to make is about the quality of the candidates being brought to you by the FABGC group. And when you look at them, Cosmo as mayor, his experience in village volunteering, and his background in architecture, something we need very much in this town. You look at the others like Mary and Terry, unique and successful in their field. People can get behind them and know that they're being listened to. And you know, you look at Bruce and Tom. I mean, finer people you'll never meet. And that's what the FABGC is bringing to the table. So I think if you measure, you know, an election by what we've been given in the last 8 years and what we could expect in the next 4, we should make a choice. And that choice is being provided to us. And it's an opportunity for Garden City to be the village that we all want it to be. And I think this election is about that. It's just about choice. And as someone who grew up here, I can encourage you that what you are being provided by the FABGC group are 5 high-quality individuals that will serve this town well. And that's what we need right now. We need people who will serve the people and respect the process of the residents' voice being important. Because it's the residents who really matter the most. And I think that's what we should be looking at.
All right, give me just a second to unmute y'all again, Bruce and
If I may, I don't know if Gerry's on the phone, but that was a very moving video. And his perseverance in helping other people with disabilities, despite all the obstacles and all the walls put in front of him, he paved the way for future people. And I'm very proud to be a friend of Gerry's, and I'm proud to represent the Eastern section to make sure that those type of decisions never happen again.
That was an unbelievable video. I've met Gerry several times, and you know, what he had to go through was ridiculous. It's just, it really moves you to see that, as Tom just said, and we won't certainly have that situation if we're on the board.
Both my parents have been dead for many years. My mom, I guess about 8, my dad 12. It would have made their last few years of their lives a lot easier, as both of them needed a walker, and we really couldn't access 7th Street. So Gerry, I thank you.
Thank you, Gerry. That endorsement means a lot to all of us, and we will not disappoint you.
Absolutely. Okay.
Right.
Do we have any questions?
We've got a couple of questions. We had one that came in on Facebook that was actually quite a while ago now, so I might have missed where this was, at what state this was asked, but does any one of the candidates understand the Taylor law and how arbitrations work?
So I could field that one. While I don't do those types of arbitrations, that's the labor relations statute that covers public employees. And I do, as my job, I handle, run administrative hearings every day. So I am familiar with the process of arbitration, very familiar with that and with the law.
And if I could add to that, we have a lot of people in town, one of whom is on the phone tonight, Tom Lamberti, that we could pull into those issues. He was a former trustee of the town, and that's the kind of talent we could leverage. He did that for a living very successfully and was very well known dealing with unions and arbitration. And that's part of our agenda, to make sure that we leverage people in our town that can help us get to where we need to be and bring in the expertise. We're not going to pretend to be experts in everything. But Mary's background will add a lot to legal issues, being that she's a judge, and her background from St. John's Law School.
Hey, I got a chat from, forgive me if I say this last name wrong, Kelly Hockheiser. We understand you have hired a lawyer and have already contested signatures on petitions. Do you plan to have your lawyer contest absentee ballots as well?
Is Kelly on the line? I'm not sure what you're talking about, Kelly. We do have a lawyer, but what contesting are you talking about? I thought I saw Kelly on the line, and I'm confused by the question because we didn't challenge the CAPS petitions.
No, we haven't.
Do you want to clarify, Kelly?
Okay, sorry, I wasn't able to unmute.
No problem. Yeah.
I was under the impression that, and I was told that your lawyer is contesting some of the petitions that were submitted in terms of signatures and whether they were valid under the nominating petitions. So my question is, once the absentee ballots come in, is the lawyer going to challenge whether the absentee ballots are valid or not?
So Kelly, you know, I'm troubled that you heard that, and I think there's a lot of misinformation coming out, and that's a perfect example that someone would have told you anything so specific that's just not accurate. I have no knowledge of any challenge, and I am the person who's spoken with the lawyer, so I'm not sure why that was relayed to you.
And also, if I could add to that, Kelly, the reason we gave the presentation on absentee ballots to begin with is we're big supporters of it, and we actually are promoting it.
No, I'm fine with the absentee ballots, but I was told that the lawyer was reviewing the nominating petitions to try and disqualify any signatures that were.
I wonder if that's actually Peter B. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think
you might want to get some clarification from your source.
It's not our attorney.
Okay, but you do have an attorney.
We do have an attorney who's helping us because none of us have ever done anything like this before.
Okay.
And
and I know that CAP has a lawyer, so would be fools not to have someone.
CAP just hired a lawyer based on the fact that you guys have a lawyer.
Are you serious?
We only did it.
We should really have a, you know what, Kelly, if you want to call me after this, it sounds like there's some misinformation flowing, and I'd be happy to talk to you.
Yeah, it's kind of disconcerting because no matter where we go, that's the tagline, is always there's misinformation, and it's hard for people to get a handle on really what's going on if that's always what's being thrown out there. It's just, it's very disappointing.
Well, it's our attorney, Kelly, so I think we would know if he did that, and he hasn't.
So
yes, our attorney specializes in legal law, and we're very transparent, as you can see, and that's why we have these meetings, Kelly, so we can bring the truth to you. So I'm glad you brought up the question, and please contact Mary if you need any more, and relay the message to those that are providing that misinformation for you. That'd be great.
Sure, I'll double check that and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, double check with Mary. She can give you all the details. And please, thanks for participating. This way you hear the truth.
Sure, thanks.
Please share your options on St. Paul's. I know you want a referendum, and that's fair, but I want to know your real recommendations and thoughts. Thanks. That came from an anonymous.
I think it's something we have to review. We haven't had a specific plan. We will have one. And you know, we're not going to give an answer now as to what exactly we're going to do, other than say we're going to have a referendum and give the residents basically two options.
Well, I think we'd back it up a little bit further than that and say that you'd have to come together with concrete numbers what's it going to take to knock it down? What's it going to take to make it something viable? The numbers 30 million versus 180 million. We don't know until we have those numbers. I think we have to, get some talented people behind that and put it to a referendum. And as I said before, you're not going to make everyone happy with this, and it's something needs to be done. We're almost 30 years into it.
And I think the other thing is we're very open to resident input. So we want to hear your ideas, and we want to make sure that you're part of the decision.
We don't even know what their annual expenses are. We've had difficulty getting that.
So just to clarify, our platform is that it should be the decision of the residents, and it should be put to, or will be put to a resolution. But we do not have a St. Paul's plan individually or collectively. That would be also resident input. I know there are a lot of people, with ideas who are working on plans. The Western Property Owners has a group, St. Paul's Committee, I believe other groups do too, would want to get a group together and come up with a proposal. And as Terry said, it's got to have numbers attached and go to the residents for a vote. We have someone raising his hand, I believe there.
Sorry, when you say somebody's raising their hand, do you mean that they're like waving at the camera, or
yeah,
physically, John? Jon, John.
You're on mute, John. John, you're on mute.
I am muted. The other John.
John, Jon is on mute. John, you're still on mute.
Unmute.
Unmute, John.
I've got a couple more questions via chat that I'm going to ask you while we try to get John squared away. It was actually a follow-up from Paul Hagan on the Taylor Law. Do you know that the Taylor Law requires both the union and the village to both agree to arbitration? It is not unilateral for one side to demand arbitration.
So is there a question there? I'm not sure who's asking on the Taylor Law. I don't hear what the question.
It's Paul Hagan. He's on Facebook. So we've kind of got the same problem that we had last week, where 40 seconds from now, he'll follow up. And then 2 minutes later, you'll finish answering another question. And then we might have to do this dance just a little bit. I'll see if I
don't think that's really a question, so we can move on.
Yeah.
Now it looks like John is unmuted.
John, you're unmuted. Go ahead. Oh, we can't hear John.
We can't get him unmuted.
He's definitely unmuted.
Maybe an issue with the microphone on his
John,
end.
your microphone might be covered. Is your microphone on your PC covered? We can't hear you. We'll go to the next question and try to circle back.
A follow-up from Anonymous on St. Paul's. We've all lived here for decades. Everyone has an opinion. What's yours? I guess he wasn't satisfied, or she, sorry, wasn't satisfied with the it's up to the residents answer.
What I would say is I need to see numbers. I can't give you an answer until we have definitive numbers.
That's absolutely true. And as I just said, we don't even know what the annual expenses are. We have to look what the expenses are and weigh our options.
I think like many people in the village, I need to know what's it going to be and what's it going to cost. And that I don't have an opinion until I have that information. I don't know how I'd go. It would depend on those factors.
Yeah, so recent information disclosed that I think the second floor fell through recently from rain damage, and to fix that, it's 200. I think it's somewhere around 250,000. So we have to get our arms around the cost, the maintenance, what it will be in the future, and the cumulative effect. So this has been going on for 30 years. My wife Donna was actually on the first St. Paul's committee, trying to come up with a resolution. But 30 years is way too long, and we got to decide one way or another. So the person asking the question, if you have any ideas on where you'd like it to go, please submit it.
I think that's the advantage to having Cosmo Vincent Ali as our mayoral candidate. with his architectural experience. Someone like that is certainly going to be an asset to moving forward and deciding what to do with St. Paul's, a problem that's existed for 30 years.
And that was Terrence Cook. Sorry, he didn't know that it was being submitted as anonymous. What does FABGC think about their response to the handicap parking debacle by the current Board of Trustees in last week's GC News?
It's actually coming on Friday in this article. I'd say not satisfied with the response. And I think if anyone who read our article, which was researched and very detailed, will also find themselves dissatisfied with the response by the community agreement party. And we're bringing that, responding again this week as to make sure that people understood our article and saw the, I thought, a poor response.
And if I could add to that, Mary, the trustees voted unanimously against handicap parking and went through 2 attorneys over 1.5 years, which was disgraceful. And God forbid one of you ends up like Gerry Kelly, who was an All-American basketball player with a disability, or if you suffer with a broken leg, or you spend a day in a wheelchair, you'll realize how important it is to have handicap parking. As Terry mentioned, his parents couldn't even, later on in the years, couldn't even go down 7th Street because they couldn't navigate and couldn't find parking spaces. So they also found out in the study that the existing parking spaces, for example, in the back of 7th Street, were not properly aligned and were too narrow based on the laws. So they had to redo those as well. So paying attention to what's going on and knowing what the issues are is critical. I recommend you all vote for the person who you feel most strongly about, and don't get caught up on why we're running as much as, not why we're running, but that we weren't nominated by the Property Owners Association. I feel it's appropriate that the whole village have a say in who's going to be a trustee, because every trustee has a say in the village decisions.
Just, back on the handicapped parking, which, you'll see our response. If you read through our article, and I hope everyone did, they hired a consultant for these 3 spots, but a consultant was never hired for any of the other handicap parking requests in town, as far as we can see. And if you read through that article, it raises a real question as to why they hired a consultant in this case. Who made the decision to hire that consultant? Because we all know the spaces are there at a minimal expense. So they got some very bad advice from the inaccurate advice from that consultant. And, it's I didn't see any response to that from the community agreement party candidates or the Board of Trustees.
And a live question from Allison Parks. Go ahead, Allison.
Oh. Hello. I've just got to say, you all the candidates are extremely impressive. I've never read the Garden City News so carefully in my whole life. And there's a lot of material every week. If you win the election, a lot of good people are involved in the POAs, and there are some, I think, trustees who have their hearts in the right place. How are you going to work with the POAs going forward? And are you hopeful that if you do win, you'll be able to keep some of these people engaged? Because I do believe they've given a lot. They've made mistakes. There's no doubt about it. But they have given their time. So I'm just wondering if you'll be reaching across the aisle, as it were.
And Allison, which part of town are you from?
I'm from the East.
Oh, good. Well, that's where I'm going to be a trustee, hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah. So let me tell you that I'm friends with a lot of the Property Owners Association people, very much so. In fact, a lot of them have quietly reached out to me that they're going to vote for me.
Great.
Yes, everyone makes mistakes. I think it's very important to be collaborative, and I'm going to be very collaborative in my approach and work with the Property Owners Association. Anyone knows me will tell you that that's part of my makeup. And I'm a good listener. I want to learn. I want to hear opinions. I don't pretend that I know it all. And you ask anybody in the Property Owners Association that knows me, and I'm sure that they would, tell you, what I'm like and how I behave and how I would act in that role.
Great, thank you.
I certainly would want to work with the Property Owners Association, the Estates Property Owners Association. And Allison, you pointed out very well, they have made some mistakes, but they're good people. And I would want to get involved, and hopefully I would be welcomed in there to get involved. And I would encourage, and we'll try to encourage more people in the estate section to get involved in the POA, because they do serve an important function.
I would agree, Allison. Absolutely. We're all in this together. It's our village, and I would work. I agree. There are many fine people, and we're always looking for volunteers, good volunteers in town who want to do the right thing. So we're not against the POAs, and we will definitely be reaching out and working together.
I would just add the similar message to everybody else, in that they should all be thanked. I mean, they're putting in time, doing their each section's business and the POAs and the like, and they need to be thanked for that. I would plan on doing the same thing if embraced, and I would plan on working with them as best I could and welcome their input on everything.
Yeah, that's well put, Terry, and Allison, and your fellow POA members on the East. Thank you for your service.
Well, I've done next to nothing, so I don't deserve any thanks, but I'm more well informed now, so maybe I will get more involved. Anyway, thank you for running.
Sure. Your house with all the snow behind you looks beautiful.
Thank you. Unfortunately, it's pure fiction, but it does look pretty nice, doesn't it?
Yes.
I do say I hope that with this challenge, as difficult as it has been in ways, I think it is raising awareness within the community, and I'm hoping it's drawing more people. It will draw more people into being engaged more and involved.
I would agree with that, Mary. I think it will get more people engaged this election, and we're gonna lose. I'm gonna go stay active in my estate's POA.
Great, thank you.
I do want to circle back to something, since we have the group here and it was raised, Kelly, to your point, because I was startled by what you said, and I did, as I'm here, email Tom Gerry is the lawyer who's helping us out. And I said, I just want to confirm, they're saying that there was a challenge, and he wrote back, we
just lost you, Mary.
That was poor timing.
It was just about to get good.
Yeah.
Mary.
She lost her video. Maybe her battery died.
While we're waiting on that juicy bit, Terry, you had a question that came to you.
Came to me directly, and it's actually from a friend of Tom O'Brien's and myself. And I'm going to read it directly, so I apologize. I'm not looking at the screen. It relates to the casino, who definitely deserves a lease. Hopefully it can be worked out. Here is my question. And by the way, the question is coming from John Sullivan from the Estates section. I've read most of the casino posts where they take great pride in running their operation for very many years without village funds. If they are to continue to run their operations on an ongoing basis, I was wondering if each of the candidates could represent to the village residents that any new lease entered into by the village with the casino will not, and he highlights not, involve any use of taxpayer funds, particularly with regard to maintenance, upkeep, most importantly, capital improvements. Should the casino not hold up its end of the lease and assess its members as opposed to the use of village monies, that should be classified as an event of default on the lease and the lease nullified. I think it's important that the village not be put in a tough situation, and this clause would cause the casino to operate efficiently, effectively, and independently and will relieve the village of any unexpected tax burdens?
All
Very
right.
good question, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could take that, Terry.
Okay.
So I've been coming up to speed on the casino issues and studying it. And I'd like to share with you some of the things that I've caught online, as well as talking to the leadership at the casino. So first of all, we don't have a crystal ball, but let me tell you where they're at and where they've been and where they're going. So I know that for 125 years, talking to leadership, they've never asked for any capital infusion from the village. 125 years, that's pretty impressive. They never had to ask for any capital infusion. And you can, all their financial statements are online and they're public. So looking at the most recent public information of the casino, the balance sheet, and as of the last one, it was as of March 30th, 2019. The one for this year, March, of course, has not come out yet. But they actually have a surplus of 182,000 in cash. They have 31,000 of liabilities with some account payable, but mostly it's the deferred revenue of dues being paid before the fiscal year. So they're in a very profitable, they're not for profit, but they're in a very good position. And I think it's important to know that that they also, they do assessments when needed, and their members have stepped up to the plate. So they wanted to redo the patio area, and it required more capital infusion. So they did a one-time assessment to do that, came up with all the funds. They filed for the village for a permit. I think it was about 3 years ago, and I just found this out. And the village turned them down, no cost to the village. And the reason they gave was that they're going to put out an RFP and they're not sure what they're going to do with the property. That was pretty alarming to the leadership. And I want to remind people who haven't been on previous calls, the permit, which was 125 years ago, is only for recreational use in the village. So if there was any intent to bring in a profitable organization, that can't be done. So I hope I'm answering that question, but I think they're in a very good financial position. And to run the club, it's about $254,000 a year, $252,000 a year. And with their dues, they came in at 254, 2,000 over what it is to run. So they've never had any financial difficulty whatsoever, but nobody has a crystal ball. And they've been a great asset for the town, great neighbor to the people on that street, and great people belong there, and they deserve a lease, a long-term lease. And the leadership is very discouraged that they have not been able to obtain a long-term lease for, I think it's the last 3 years. And that's not defensible. They don't cost anything to the village. So Terry, I think I may have answered that question to the best of my ability.
Well, I guess the one thing John's looking for is just a guarantee moving forward. He thinks they should definitely have a lease, but some sort of clause that protects the village.
Yeah, and I haven't seen the lease at all, so I don't know what's in front of them because there is no lease in front of them.
Yeah, we'll have to look at that when we get in, but I think they've been holding their own for all these years. I don't see why they couldn't continue to do so. And we certainly would protect and hopefully not have to use village expenses for it. I don't think we're going to have to.
Well, like any club, for example, John belongs to the Garden City Golf Club, and he'll tell you that, and people that belong to Cherry Valley or any other club, beach club, or what have you, there's assessments that the membership steps up to the plate and pays to keep the club running without any, deficit.
Capital hit.
Yeah, and that's exactly right, Tom. The Garden City Country Club does that. I'm a house member there, and they will put assessments on from, well, pretty much a lot of times, but the members have to take care of it.
I would say we have Mary back on the line.
Yeah, sorry about that. And I was just getting to Kelly. I wanted to tell you that question or the statement you made. I just emailed Tom Gerry, who is the attorney who is helping us, and he confirmed we absolutely did not challenge anyone. So someone's giving you misinformation. Be careful that you're not spending your money on a lawyer unnecessarily. I don't know why they would have said that to you, but it's an absolute no from us and from the lawyer.
Hey.
John.
All right, we can move on.
John.
Yep, there were a couple of questions that Mary got on Facebook that, Mary, you wanted me to remind you before we got off to, so that you could remind them, and I'll just kind of tee them up for you, if you will.
Great.
I'll just go through them one at a time. Where do you stand on opening the parks and pools to the public, non-Garden City residents?
Okay, so the question's from Kristen Imperial, who posed this on Facebook, but had to work tonight and was unable to be here. And I, actually my sister assured her we would answer. So on the pool and the parks, our staffed park programs, I think they are some of our greatest assets here in Garden City and hugely important to our community. I remember when I was looking, you know, to buy a house with my family and deciding what community to live in, the pool and the staffed parks really set Garden City aside from other communities. And I think most people would probably agree with that. I don't think there are other communities that have anything like the Garden City pool and the park program as well, where the kids can go and there's staff there organizing games, doing arts and crafts. I think they're great assets, and I think they affect our property values significantly. We can bring guests to the pool and to the parks. And we always have been able to, as far as I know. And I think we should be able to. They are supported by tax dollars. And as far as opening them up to the public, I think they are, to the extent, you know, out of towners, they can come as our guests. I don't know what the rationale would be to opening up, you know, allowing people outside of Garden City to get memberships, for instance, at the pool. So I'd really need to hear further on why we might do that, but they are great assets that we value. And on that, I'd also note all that talk on the casino. You know, the casino was one issue, but I think the secret deliberations that we've been talking about in the news, it's happening with the casino and other things, and the pattern of selling assets, village assets, which has occurred without public deliberations. I think of things like the pool and the parks. And I think we have to be really careful that we have transparent government, because can you imagine if one day, you know, you found out the pool was leased out to a private company, we got a great deal and we're making a profit. That could all happen. So that would be my statement on the pools and the parks.
So to
Does anyone have any
follow up on, I'm sorry, I was just going to follow up on what Mary said. The pool was something we really looked forward to when we moved to this town. Our kids enjoyed it very much, and two of our daughters were lifeguards. It was a big asset to have. And yes, you can bring guests, which we have done, which I think covers it well.
All right, anyone have anything to add to that, or agree or disagree?
I think you both answered it very well, and we'll leave it at that.
Okay. Where do you stand on having parades in the village for the LGBTQ community?
All right, so I'm not aware of any specific requests for such a parade, but I think any group of residents who have a request, whether it's for a parade or any other event, will be heard and treated equally. I don't know if the suggestion is
permits, right?
There's a process. That's actually parades. I think are quite a process. It's a big disruption, but and cost. But the process would be the same for any group, and the consideration would be the same.
Yeah, so they have to obtain a permit.
Yes.
Where do you stand on affordable housing within the village?
So affordable housing, and I think same questions were asked to the other candidate. It was pointed out that we do have affordable housing coming on that new project on Stewart Avenue that I think is all under, you know, those decisions have been made, and we do have the apartment building coming there, and it will have, as required, affordable housing. I'm not aware of other development projects right now in town. I do know, I think as we all know, that people are concerned about density, the tax base, the schools. So any development proposed would, all those factors would be considered and all residents would be heard. But I don't think there is an affordable housing project before anyone now. And it is mandated now. So for or against, that will be a reality.
Yeah, I could add that on affordable housing, 10% of the housing should be designated as affordable housing. And I think it'd be nice for people who are retiring in town that they have an opportunity to get that affordable housing, because some of them can't afford the Wyndham. And the other apartments are full, like it's hard to get into Hilton Hall and so on. So that could be a real opportunity for people in our town to retire into affordable housing.
That would be an option.
I think on the affordable housing, that's a great point, Tom. And I think there are a lot of people who leave Garden City because of the taxes. So that's another reason FABGC is very focused on, you know, eliminating any needless spending and keeping the taxes down. Okay.
Where do you stand on the reopening of schools?
All right, so I think we fielded this maybe at one of our first Zoom calls. And at that time, you know, I noted, as I'll note again today, that I don't have any kids. I assume we're talking about the Garden City Public Schools. My youngest just graduated. The other thing, there's been a lot of talk about this online, and I worry online as people jump in at different points that they don't go back and read the whole thread. A lot of people aren't that familiar with our village government, and the Board of Trustees has no say in the reopening of the schools. That's the Board of Education. So I would hesitate to make any statement because I think that would suggest that we would have a say, or that a vote for us would have any impact on the reopening of the schools. So it does not, that's not within the purview of the Board of Trustees. I think, you know, as a mother, I do have 2 kids in college, and we're dealing with a lot of the same, you know, difficulties. It's a really tough time for young people, whether they're in high school or college. It's, you know, hugely challenging. And I think, I don't know, you know, everyone I'm sure would agree that we support the reopening. If the schools can be safely reopened fully, and it looks like we're able to do that, I think that's terrific, and I support that.
That's what we would look for, to see if they could open safely. It is a decision that's made by the Board of Education trustees along with the superintendent, with input from the parents. But again, that decision would go in the Board of Education.
I would highlight a little bit. I have a niece that's a senior in high school. All my kids have gone through, but I have a niece that's a senior and a nephew's a freshman. And I would say my niece is a senior, missed out on was 3 or 4 months last year. And this year kind of going is 1 or 2 days a week, and has missed out on everything that people look forward to between homecoming and Winter Wonderland, and all the big social events have all been kind of, you know, taken away from her. So if able to open up the schools, I think it would be a great idea, but you have to do it the smart way where everyone is safe.
Okay. And the last one from Facebook, and then I do have a couple more that came in via chat. Do you have any political aspirations or goals that are beyond the needs of our village?
At this point in my life, I'm just looking to help the village, to serve the village, to try to get the village in the right direction. There are some very serious issues that I feel, we feel, were not handled well or correctly. And at my point in life, that's all I want to do.
There might be an opening in Albany soon, the way things are going through the press. But having said that, I have no aspirations.
Nor do I.
nor do I, I thought that's a rumor that's apparently being spread, and I'm flattered that anyone thinks that we would have such aspirations. Absolutely not. This was, I think the other candidates are probably the same. I stepped up to do this because of my love for Garden City and realizing there was a need, not for any other reason.
Yeah, and I echo that from my standpoint as well. Thank you, Mary.
Okay. We are still not happy with your answers on St. Paul's. You've mentioned that your wife was on the original committee. How do none of y'all have an opinion after all of these years? I get that it's divisive, but you're running. Please share your opinion.
Who's asking this?
It was Terrence Cook.
Okay.
I might have editorialized a little bit to press y'all a little bit for opinions since it keeps coming back up.
And I don't know what else we can add. I mean, we're not going to have a specific, architectural plan for St. Paul's until we see all the numbers, all the expenses and everything else. We certainly want to do something, and we hope we will. And I would expect the residents to want us to do something, but we can't answer specifically, what, our option would be in a referendum.
I'll go back to what I said earlier. You have to have the numbers behind each decision. I'm not gonna, if it were 30 million to demolish, 30 million to create something new, then I think it's a no-brainer. That's not gonna be the case.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, who's the gentleman who asked the question again?
Terrence Cook.
Yeah, so you're gonna have a vote, and so will the whole town. It comes down to a vote based on what we can bring forward from the recommendations of the residents in town. So I have no opinion. I want to see what the residents want, and then we'll bring it to an up and down resolution. So, that's where I stand.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really have I don't have a plan or personal opinion. I think if there's a vote for demolition, I think it's going to be difficult for anyone. But I think that's what we've committed to, letting this go to a vote.
With two options. I'm sorry, Mary.
As much as I'd say as far as having an opinion.
With two options.
Yeah. Again, right. I ask, please give us your opinion on what you would like to see. That's helpful.
Terrence? Is
Terrence,
he on the
do you have
call?
An opinion? Terrence,
maybe we'll love it.
Terrence, please send us your opinion. We'd love to see it. John, let us know when he responds.
Yep.
I think there's fatigue in town. I think we've all lived a long time. That may be, you may be newer to town and surprised that we don't have an idea in our head of a plan, but we've been through so many phases of this, so many different plans and so many years of debate that your perspective changes a bit. That could be why you don't understand our responses or feel they're genuine, but mine is genuine.
All of us are.
I have a live question from Brian Mulrooney. Brian, if you want to unmute yourself and. Can't hear you, although you appear to be unmuted.
Ryan?
Ryan Mulrooney, I know Ryan. Is he there?
He's there.
I can hear him. I've got one via chat that we can ask while we try to figure out Ryan. Wait, sorry, where did it go? I got buried a little bit. How much money, oh, sorry, this is from Verano. How much money has FABGC spent on this campaign, and where is the money coming from?
Oh, hello. We have
about $5,000 that covers legal and mailings, and we've had a tremendous amount of donations.
Right, donations.
Yeah, and I want to thank our donation. The donations have been the generous donations that have been ongoing is just terrific. So I want to thank everybody who's been writing those checks. That's very kind of you.
We will have, we have a treasurer who's keeping track of the expenditures, and we'll be filing. There are like 2 different filing dates. So, and we can get more details.
Yeah, we're doing everything by the book.
Flyers, ads, and everything. We have to pay for it.
John, you want me to see if Ryan could chat the question?
Or can we hear you now, Ryan? Okay, I've got another live one from Robert Stone. Robert, if you want to, oh, Ryan left and came back, so we'll have to give Ryan a minute. Robert?
Hey, thanks, John. Hello, candidates. Thank you very much for putting your hats into the ring. You have my full support. My question is in regards to the recent ad that the Community Agreement Party put out in the Garden City News and online, where they stated that there was a high risk of the Garden City Volunteer Fire Department quitting, you know, in the context of, I don't know if it was the context of the Community Agreement Party not getting reelected or whatever the case may be. But has anyone, my question is, has anyone contacted the fire department to find out if this is a true, if this is their true position? Because it seems, you know, I'd just love to know what the basis for that claim was, because, you know, on the surface, you know, it's grossly irresponsible to spread something like that publicly. So I just wanted to find out if anyone has reached out to the village or the fire department to find out, you know, if that statement is in fact true.
Yeah, can I start, folks? Robert, that's a good question. Our fire department is not political, and a lot of them were very upset that they were represented in that way and are not looking to quit if the slate is not elected. It did come across that way to me as well. But these are people who are devoted many years of service, putting their life at risk, and they absolutely provide a great service for the town, and we're proud of them. And they're not political. They just want to serve the town as best they can. So that's the feedback I'm getting, and that it wasn't representative of all the volunteers in our town. I don't know if anyone else wants to comment.
Well, you wouldn't think volunteer firemen. I mean, I've insured volunteer firemen. I know how they are. I know they put a lot of time and effort, and it's the work. They're volunteering to do it. To think that they would just up and quit is ridiculous. That whole ad was so disingenuous and malicious, frankly. And where they're getting this number, your taxes are going to go, you know, 15,000. It was such a ridiculous thing. I couldn't believe they put that ad. They put that ad in the paper, and it's just unbelievable.
Why? I think we're all kind of shocked, but we do have, Yvonne is on the line, as is Kelly, I think might be involved. If you want to shed any light on the basis for that ad. We do have at least one opposing candidate on the line who could speak to that. I don't know if we have more than one.
We can give them a minute. Ryan's back on and
unmute yourself and explain if there was some basis for that. And if you think it was fair, you can explain why to Rob.
Ryan's back on if we want to ask Ryan really quick.
Yeah, sorry about that. You have to change your settings there on the phone. But just, I know Terry Cook keeps coming in. One thing I definitely don't want in St. Paul's is a indoor hockey arena. So if anybody's taking a poll tonight. But I've always, you know, my issues with the village have always been that's the way we've always done it, a response you get a lot. And the other one is communication, and not just communication as to what's going on, but especially in emergency situations, which we've had quite a few, you know, over the last decade or so. You know, the hurricane we had in August, you know, simple things like water issues when they're flushing lines, you know, let people know that there's brown water that day. But they had this SWIFT system where everybody signed up, and they've had it for 15 years, and I don't think they've used it once. And I remember when Hurricane Sandy came in, I mean, if you couldn't find a time to use it during Hurricane Sandy, I don't know what they're waiting for or what why they're paying money to have this system. But I remember during Sandy, there was there were armed robberies going on in the village. Yeah. And I found out because I knew one of the trustees at the time, and I saw a hard copy of an email that was sent around by the police to the trustees and circulated amongst the trustees that there was a serious situation with an armed robber. And I don't want to go into the details because it ended up going into East Garden City, and it got somebody was nearly killed. And why the residents weren't made aware of the situation at the time. And we've got, you know, I don't know how many times we've had helicopters going over the town here, and you hear you know, I think about a couple of weeks ago, there was an armed suspect that right on the West Hempstead Garden City border. And, you know, why aren't the residents alert? Why do we have to scroll around 80 Facebook groups around the area to find that there's an armed suspect in our town with helicopters going over, and we have an alert system that we don't use? You know, the residents have a right to know when their safety is at risk. And I just could never get an answer from the trustees or the mayors at the time is why they don't alert residents to, you know, emergency situations or dangerous situations. Even we had protests this summer going down residential blocks, and nobody was made aware. I mean, if you had children out there, that could have gotten dangerous. We saw it get dangerous throughout the country, and nobody was made aware of what was going on. So I guess my question is, what would be your plan? I mean, this is over a decade later nearly from Sandy. We have a lot better technology, and yet we still have no idea what's going on half the time when there's an emergency or a dangerous situation. So what would be the plan to let residents know when their safety could be at risk?
Well, if I can, how you doing, Ryan?
Good, yeah.
Good. That was, you just enlightened me. I wasn't aware that we had a system because I've never heard from that system. And as you know, when, you know, the Amber Alert comes on my phone, and in college universities, when there's an issue, they get an alert on their cell phone. And I think since you brought this to our attention, and we'll pull you in if we're elected to talk about it, I think we should see if we can do that for our residents. And because everybody seems to have a cell phone, and as a backup, it can go to their home phone. But I do remember during Sandy, those armed robberies, and I think one of the residents fought the person off. But you bring up a very, very important thing, especially now in the world the way it is. I mean, look at the attack on the Capitol, right? To have protests going on in town and your kids are running around on their bicycles and you're not aware of it, and if it get out of hand. So, you know, your point is really well taken with me, and I didn't realize that we had even a system in place, but we should have, and it has to be utilized.
That was that we had this alert system. We certainly should use it if we have it, and I don't understand why we wouldn't. When you were talking about, you know, you're finding out about helicopters going around and chasing a subject, and you find out about it on Facebook. That shouldn't be the only way to do it. And Sandy, of course, that was a very terrifying time for people that were robbed, and as you say, someone was almost killed by an intruder. So we would certainly look into that. I don't see why we wouldn't, and implement it. Like Nassau County gives you warnings if there's high winds or things like that, and it comes on your phone. If we have that kind of system, I would think we would use it.
Yeah, and universities, it comes on the phone, they go into lockdown and everyone gets an alert and they lock down the buildings.
Right, right. There's so many times when you see helicopters going around and around and you wonder what's going on, and then we eventually find out on Facebook, you know, what was going on, who they were chasing.
Ryan, I would say excellent point, and did echo what Tom said. I had 4 kids go to school in Los Angeles. I still get the alerts if something goes on, And it's reassuring to know it's on West 28th versus whatever. And it's a very helpful system, and it's something that we should certainly look into.
Right.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And it doesn't even have to be that, like a simple thing. Like I remember when the water main broke by Stewart School and Stewart Avenue, there was over a foot of water there and people were driving right into it. And I don't know how many cars got stuck.
Really?
You know, just a simple alert, you know, do not go eastbound on Stewart Avenue on the other side of Clinton because there's 2 feet of water on, you know. So but I appreciate you, you know, I appreciate everybody's time really. And you know, everybody have busy lives. So, you know, I always appreciate the people who step up and try to contribute. So I also wanted to thank everybody.
Thank you, Ryan, for the question. And thank you for the information on this system.
That was enlightening.
Yeah. You definitely got to, you know, take care of that.
Especially these days.
Oh, yeah.
Very good. Yeah. Any other questions, John?
Yeah, there's always one last question for Bruce, I guess. Bruce, when and where is the village election? That came from one Mr. Cantwell.
For me?
Seems a little silly to ask after the presentation earlier, but yes, let's remind people before we sign off.
And what a phenomenal presentation it was. The election is March 16th. The hours of voting are from 12 to 9. We wish they were longer. They are not. You can vote by absentee ballot, and you can check off the fact COVID as a reason for not coming in person to vote. So again, it's March 16th, and I believe the absentee ballots have to be in once you get a ballot by, did you say 9 p.m. on March 16th, I think, John? Okay, March 16th, 9 p.m. And again, if anybody has any questions regarding the absentee ballot applications, just ask John. Now, any of us will help you out and answer those questions. And is that it for the questions, John?
That's all of them.
Thanks again, John, for putting all this together. We really appreciate it. You're such an asset to us. Thank you all for being on. We appreciate it. We really would look forward to your support for voting down the line for FABGC, for a better Garden City, because we will make a better Garden City. Thank you very much, and good night.
You know, can I just add one thing? I did get a last minute question on the text. Someone was or confused about the ballots, thinking that they had to mail their ballots in. That's not true. They can be dropped off after you get the ballot. Yeah. I think it was clear, but just in case anyone heard anything. And I think Rob, sorry we didn't get an answer from the other side. I think I cleared the room.
I think you probably did. We got a few people off. So good night, everybody, and thank you all again.
Thanks for coming, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you, Bruce. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, John.
Thank you, guys. Good night, everybody.